All right. Well, welcome to ABC's Weddings Unveiled podcast. I have with me today Catrina Reese, who wears many hats. She is an award winning officiant, planner, trainer, coach, and my favorite, a faith driven entrepreneur. Each one of those plays a role in how she creates meaningful, inclusive wedding experiences. So, in this episode, we're going to talk about what it really means to serve couples with intention, cultural awareness, and heart. Catrina shares real wedding stories, lessons learned from working across roles, and how officiants and planners can become advocates for couples who don't always see themselves represented in the wedding industry. From navigating family dynamics and honoring traditions to designing ceremonies that reflect identity, love, and values, this conversation is a powerful reminder that weddings aren't just events, they are emotional milestones. Perfect for wedding planners, officiants, coordinators, and creatives who want to elevate the client experience and lead with empathy. So, welcome, Catrina. I want to, we're so excited, that this podcast is kicked off. And I'm even more excited to be offering this as a great opportunity for our members like you. So tell me just a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you so much, Veronica, for this opportunity. I am learning, first of all, so much. You guys have so much information and you have so many resources out there for us. So thank you for all that you guys put into keeping us educated and learned and relevant. But I am Catrina Reese. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina, born and bred, been here all my life. And I would say that I just love what I do pretty much. I'm a mother, I am a wife, I'm a grandma. And yes, I do wear a lot of hats, but I do find time to balance it all. So I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Oh, it is my pleasure. Well, let me, because you do wear so many hats, and now you said grandmother, mother, wife. Oh my gosh, that's even more hats. So how do you feel like your background in planning and coordinator enhance the way that you officiate ceremonies?
Well, it's interesting, Veronica, because I actually started out as a wedding singer. Um,
Oh,
and I'm not going to tell you my age, but I am. I'm 63 years old, and I sang at weddings at my church, family and friends. So when you're behind the scenes, sitting, at that position, you see, planners at the time, they weren't called coordinators, they were called, other things. You just kind of see the whole, overall picture. And so that's kind of how it got started a little bit, just like I'm sitting there like, oh God, they're getting started late. So if they had done this different, then, that's how it goes. So later on in 2006, I was licensed and ordained at my local church. And so I really just started out doing ministry, Bible study, all kind of different things. But then about 2010, 11, a friend of mine asked me to do her wedding, to officiate her wedding. She said, well, I know you're a licensed minister. You've gotten up in front of all kind of people. You've sang, you've done this. And I was like, but I've never officiated. So that's kind of how it got started. So got the bug and I absolutely loved it. And that's just kind of how it has grown from there, from officiating. COVID hit, and then I kind of had to pivot. So I am licensed and certified as a premarital marriage coach. So I kind of pivoted to that, when places started closing up. And so I kind of started, helping couples, kind of get that foundation set So when they did finally get married, and everything opened back up, that's how it kind of moved to that part. And then the coordinating and planning part just kind of fell in my lap because I planned my own wedding and did all of that. So I know what it takes, to get that started, who you have to call and contracts and, making sure
Right.
everything, from the beginning to all the way to the end, kind of how you have to set up a wedding. So that's kind of how it happened. And I absolutely love it.
Awesome. I think premarital counseling is so important nowadays. One of the things, just personally, you know, I've been married, it'll be 20 years this year, and it's a whole other job. And I think a lot of these, the younger group today, they don't give things time. Everything is a now, rush, rush, rush. They're speeding down the highway and I'm driving like an old lady. Everything's a hurry. And I think when they skip that premarital counseling, it's a very important part of tools that they could use for the marriage, not just the wedding that we're going to give them. So
Hmm.
I definitely applaud you for, taking on that job, because I know it's probably a lot.
It can be a lot. Because sometimes, I do have couples that say, oh, we're good. We don't need it. And it's not, as an officiant, I don't make it mandatory because, I don't have my own church. So, a lot of pastors, they say, well, in order for me to marry you, you got to go through counseling. But I do definitely suggest it for couples, especially when I can kind of sense there's just some things there that may need some work on. And to be honest, I've had some couples that decided that they didn't want to move forward with the wedding, that they did need more time. They needed time to either get to know each other or just to work on some things individually. So
Yeah.
it does work and it does help.
Good, good. Well, let me ask you this, because you've seen a lot of different weddings, over your career. Can you share with us a wedding story that deeply impacted you?
Oh God, I know you probably hear this all the time. There are so many, but I'm not sure if this will be a bad impact or a good impact. So you didn't really ask me, but
Right.
I'm going to say one of the weddings that really impacted me the most was one that I was coordinating. The couple actually found me on, one of the, local sites. And so we sat down, had a conversation about, it was one of those DIY brides, which,
Yeah.
they did everything themselves. And it was like, okay, well, one thing we just want you to come and do the day of. And I was like, okay, so the month out, we kind of had everything which we thought, in place. And what happened was the makeup artist ghosted the bride, and there was one other hiccup that happened. So this wedding, Veronica, was literally an hour late. And I pride myself on being very punctual, making sure everything's in place. And the bride hadn't even gotten there. I kept calling him, like, what's going on? And so she finally confessed to what was happening. And so the other part about it, that was I had two vendors, my officiant and also one of my musicians that was like, look, we've I've booked another wedding. I've got to go. And so this was the first time this had ever happened to me before. And I'm like, okay, my bride's getting ready to lose her officiant, so she's not going to be able to get married. And I just, finally she called me and I'm like, look, this is what you've got going on. But there was another that her DJ was there, which was great. So he kind of kept the music going. I would go, and update, the guests, family and friends, what was going on. So because I'm licensed and ordained, I asked the officiant, I said, I know you got to go. I said, can you lead me the ceremony? And they did. So I actually had to perform the ceremony when the bride finally showed up. And
Wow.
then after that, they had to change and switch roles and then, coordinate, the reception and all of that right there. So if you want to know impact, that's impact. So I would say that's
Yeah.
been probably one of the most memorable weddings that has impacted me. Just letting couples know that, I know this is your day, but you have to be mindful of your guests, family and friends, and also the people that you hire, And then I tell vendors, don't book yourself the same day
Yeah.
with another wedding because that can happen. And it did.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she almost didn't get married. That was,
Mm-hmm.
wow. Switching hats a little bit on you because I know about all the different things that you do from your perspective. And this one's going to be a tough one. What does true diversity and inclusion look like? And I know that is hard. I yesterday I went and I saw the monks walk
Mm-hmm.
for peace, and I loved it. So when I looked at my calendar this morning and I saw you were going to be here, I'm like, this is a perfect time for that. With all that's going on in the world, I'm not sure if everyone understands what true inclusion and diversity look like.
I totally agree. They actually came through Charlotte, and I didn't get an opportunity to see them. But before they got to Charlotte, my parents, my mom's deceased. We lost her in October last year, but
I'm
they
sorry to hear that.
actually went down the main road coming up Highway 21 through Fort Lawn and Catawba and Rock Hill. And so my sister was actually able to come and record them, and she sent it to us. And even just feeling the presence, Veronica, through, I wasn't there physically, but just seeing the walk and just following them, even on social media, there is a peace and a presence that you just can't explain. I was raised Baptist, but and I've gone through various denominations, but my base is Christian, and I'm non-denominational now, but I heard a lot of people say that, oh, they're Buddhist monks, you're not, their religion, blah, 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 blah. And I can understand where they were coming from, but when you look at, we're all here about peace and inclusion and accepting people, whatever religion they are. Um, I just thought that was so meaningful. And I see that a lot in my weddings because I recently had a couple, he was Jewish and she was Indian. And so, of course, Indians, um, they have their own cultural thing. They do days, sometimes weeks of celebration. And then this young man, he wasn't practicing, Jewish, but she was, she practiced her faith. And I thought about it, I was like, well, how are they going to make this work, but they were the most respectful couple, to each other because they understood where they were coming from and their background. And they included a little bit of it in their ceremony. So it could be done. I think it all takes you understanding where your partner is coming from and being respectful of that. And then even family members understanding that, they may not include all what our normal cultural things are and the traditions and the rituals that we practice, but as long as it's a part of it. So at the end, he did the glass where you wrap it up and step on it and say Mazel Tov at the end. So
Mhm.
that's what we did. That's what his mom, she was like, well, if he can't do the whole thing, and she was like, I'm not going to, do a lot of my stuff. We're going to do that later. But and so we were able to include that. So I thought that was very, very sweet.
Good, good. What are some of the barriers that you feel like the marginalized couples still face in the wedding planning process?
I think because a lot of our vendors or even like planners and whatever whatever position or role you play in the wedding industry, you need to be educated. You need to understand, because that's one of the things that I do. I've done African weddings, I've done Indian weddings, I've done various cultures. So I try to keep my mind open to understand, how I need to be educated and how I need to approach, family and different things like that. I think that's one of the things that we have to learn in this business. You need to be educated. You need to stay on your game. You need to and then if you don't want that to do that kind of wedding, then it's okay to say, you know what, I don't want to do that. And I think a lot of times we do it and we put ourselves in an awkward position, and then we do our client an injustice.
That's the truth. That's the truth. Can you share a time with us when you had to learn to adapt to a cultural or spiritual tradition to best serve a couple?
Yeah, I did have an African couple that her father, they did a diary. And that was the first time I'd ever seen that done. And it was a long, day ceremony. So you probably know, but
Mm.
I think some of the people that they didn't really understand that were her guests, because they were invited, so they were a part of it. But people get restless when they don't really understand what's going on. So I think a lot of couples need to be mindful of who they invite, so people won't feel, obligated to be there, but also won't say, "Oh God, I'm ready to go," or because you could see people were very, um, agitated. And I think, just educating our couples and making them aware that, be careful who you invite and make sure it's somebody that really understands your culture, so, they won't feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think some of that is like figuring out a way to educate your guests on what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I know
Mm-hmm.
I've done an Indian wedding before, and they had a really nice booklet printed that had a list of all of the traditions and some words, that you could say to other people in their language. And I thought that was, absolutely great. But I do understand, like, not everybody can afford something like that. And not everyone really knows to, produce something like that, even on a
Mm-hmm.
smaller scale.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I would definitely suggest that to a couple that, are going to follow a strict, cultural rituals during their ceremony. Because again, like you said, with certain Indian traditions, they change attire. They're doing it several days, sometimes weeks ahead of time, and there's a process to that. So
Mhm.
I truly believe that it's all about educating.
Awesome. Awesome. And I know, you have a family. So family expectations can, of course, always be challenging with weddings. How do you navigate situations where traditions may conflict with what the couple actually wants?
Um, I've only really had two situations, Veronica, where the bride really didn't want to do what her parents wanted her to do. I have one in particular. I remember that there was a young bride getting married. Her mother had passed, and her father had remarried. So you know
Mm.
how that is.
Yeah.
So dad wanted the new wife to sit on the front row with her, and bride didn't want that. She was like, "No, I have a spot here where I have a picture of mom, and that is mom's position, and so I want you to respect that." And it took a little bit of talking to because we actually had to settle that at the rehearsal. We didn't try to settle it the
Oh,
day
wow.
of. So
That's
once, we sat down and I kind of, because sometimes you have to be a negotiator.
yeah,
you gotta have on different hats, like you said.
that's
But
right.
and so once he kind of understood that, and he was walking her down the aisle because at first she didn't even want him to walk her. She
Wow.
wanted to walk by herself because they had this tension going on. And again, after, we just sat down and talked about it. I said, look, life is short. Your mom's not here and your mom is going to be here with us. I said, and I was telling him, but you need to respect your daughter. She's not disrespecting, your new wife. She's just saying she doesn't want her to have that kind of position. And he understood. And so the new wife sat on the second row.
Well, there you go. Still toward the front. That's good.
At least she wasn't on the back row.
Yeah, that's the truth. Awesome. Awesome. Have you seen in any of the weddings that you've done any maybe mistakes, like common mistakes that you see other vendors making while working with, diverse couples?
Yeah, I've seen that. Like I said, it's all about education, I think.
Yeah.
When, excuse me,
That's
when a couple doesn't, when a couple doesn't explain to their other vendors what's going on, and they just assume that they can do their regular stuff, um, that's where you have conflict that happens. So I think as a planner, you have to make sure that you have regular conversations with the vendors, with the bride and the groom, to make them aware that, in order for everything to run smoothly, let's educate everybody to understand this is what you want and how you want things to happen. And once you do that, once everybody knows what their role is, Veronica, I think it runs smooth at that point.
yeah. I agree. I think the open communication is very important between vendors and planners and even caterers and DJs. They need to all have conversations on a regular basis because if something is delayed or something happens or one time we had the caterer saw the groom leave and then he knew that the announcements were going to be made for like the first dance. So he was able to, go over to DJ and say, hey, the groom just walked out. He went to the bathroom, hold on a second. So it's important that they all know how things work. So he wouldn't have called for first dance and then the bride would have been standing out there by herself. To avoid those
Mm-hmm.
types of things, they need to work together. And that's one of the things we're really trying really hard to push within ABC is going back to that in-person networking. Because when you do that, you meet the people that you're going to work with, and that relationship gets built. So the trust is built. And then when you guys go to do, a wedding together, it flows a lot easier for everyone involved. So I definitely agree with that one.
Oh, yeah,
So
that's very important.
it is. It is. What message, Katrina, do you think or do you hope that listeners take away about inclusion, leadership, and heart centered services? Because that's, really what you do.
Yeah, I think that once a bride hires a planner, um, from beginning to end, like you said, communication is so important. Communicating with the vendors, the venue, all of that, because our main purpose, our main reason for getting hired is to make sure that that day is so special for that couple. Is it going to be perfect? Not all the time, but you want to try to get it as close to a great day as possible. Um, you can't promise, try not to promise anything, but try to your best. And that's what my motto is. I try my best to do what I can do and what I can change and correct. And I tell people all the time, my reviews speak for themselves. I I don't go above and beyond, which like I'm not groveling at their feet and you know what I'm saying, but I make
Mhm.
myself I put myself out there where I earn their respect, and you have to do that at the beginning. Now you're going to get some last minute business where they're going to call you and they're like, "Oh, my coordinator, she was in an accident," or we get that as officiants all the time. "Oh, my officiant, blah blah blah," and you'll get something last minute. But if you've established that relationship with your couple and your vendors at the beginning, and I do that on a regular, I have phone calls, we do emails. Um, we sometimes we even maybe meet, so it doesn't always work in every situation, but if you
Mhm.
build that trust, if you build that camaraderie, if you let them know, I respect you, I don't want to step in your lane, because I'm not a photographer, so I don't know how to take pictures, so I want you to do the best, be the best photographer that you are. I'm not a caterer and I'm definitely not a decorator. So I stay in my lane. I'm not out there trying to do somebody else's job. But I want us all to work together, because our main job is to make sure that at the end of the night, even when you're picking up all that stuff off the floor and making sure the venue looks, as best as it can before you got there, you want to hear somebody say, "Wow, you did a great job. I appreciate it. You caught us on that lag time," because you're going to have lag time. Sometimes the ceremony may end early.
Yeah,
What do
that's
you do
true.
there? So all kind of things can happen. Our job is to keep it moving, to keep it moving.
Yeah, that's perfect. And Katrina, before we wrap it all up, can you tell our listeners how they can connect with you and learn more about what you do?
Well, you can reach me on all social media platforms. I just got on TikTok, and I'm
Oh,
actually
there you
falling in
go.
love with TikTok. But I have a website, katrinareese.com. Uh, I'm on Facebook. I'm on X, but Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and I'm also on Pinterest. But if you just Google my name, hopefully I'll pop up, and I'm right there for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katrina. I really appreciate you and coming on the podcast. I know it's not always easy, but most of all, I thank you for being an ABC member and a part of our community, and really working hard to make yourself a success. Because, I always tell everyone, the more that planners are successful in your community, it's the more successful they are also in their community. It's very important, that way we are not each other's competition. And we
Hmm.
just want to make sure that everyone knows that and operates as that. So I appreciate you coming on ABC's ABC's Wedding Unveiled podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. And I like what you just said too, because that's the biggest thing. We're not each other's competition. I have a huge network of people that I've met, along the way, doing weddings. And if I'm not available, then I have people that I can say, "Hey, I know somebody that, can do this for you, and I'll refer. I'm a big referrer. I don't have a problem referring people that I know and I work with, and I know the quality of their work, and I know the passion that they have for it. So I love that you said that this is not about competition, but this is about making each other better and also holding each other accountable.
That's right. That's right. I do feel like that's probably number one on my list of things to make sure going forward, because with only that is how we're going to create the standards for the industry. It's not each other that we want to knock out of the business. It's,
Hmm.
to put it nicely, it's the $25 certifications. It's the, auntie who's doing her daughter's wedding for free. It's those are our competitions. It's not definitely not each other. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate you for, jumping in that pool with us head first.
Thank you. Look, and I've had some brides come to me and they're like, "Oh, my grandma or my cousin was doing this, and oh my God, it's not what I want." And I'm like, you know what? I try to tell you, you need to hire a
Yeah,
professional because they're gonna just they're not going to give you what you want. So I've
that's
always had
right.
couples that come back and say, "Oh, I'm so glad I didn't hire, my cousin to do my decorations."
Yeah, because you probably didn't even show up. It's amazing.
It is.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you. And I'm going to have
Thank
you
you.
hold on for just 1 second.